The rain had just stopped when Elena Carter arrived at the tall iron gates of the Montgomery estate. Her shoes were soaked, her heart raced, and her hands trembled as she clutched the letter of employment she'd been praying for. For a single mother with a 6-year-old daughter, every opportunity mattered. The grand mansion loomed before her, cold, elegant, and intimidating. Through the glass windows, she saw chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls and portraits of serious-looking people staring down from the walls. She had only seen such luxury in magazines. The butler, a stern man named Mr. Graves, opened the door. "You must be the new housekeeper. Mrs. Montgomery is expecting you." Elena nodded nervously, brushing raindrops from her uniform. As she entered, the scent of polished wood and old money filled her senses. The mansion felt like a museum. Every step echoed, every painting seemed to watch her. Mrs. Montgomery descended the grand staircase moments later. She was a tall, graceful woman in her late 50s, dressed in a deep burgundy gown and a string of pearls. Her eyes were sharp but not unkind. "You're Elena?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Elena replied softly. "You'll be responsible for the East Wing, mostly cleaning, dusting, and maintaining the portraits. The late Mr. Montgomery was a collector of fine art. His son, Richard, is abroad." Her voice faltered slightly at the mention of the son's name, though Elena didn't notice. "Understood, ma'am." For the next few hours, Elena worked quietly. The mansion was spotless, yet Mrs. Montgomery insisted on perfection. Elena moved carefully, her yellow gloves brushing over marble tables and golden frames. But when she entered the gallery hall, she froze. There, hanging prominently on the center wall, was a large portrait of a man in a black suit. His eyes, calm, confident, and heartbreakingly familiar, stared straight at her. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Her heart started pounding so violently she could barely stand. She stepped closer, her trembling fingers reaching out toward the painted face. It couldn't be. The man in the portrait wasn't just anyone. He was Ethan Blake, the man who had once promised her forever. The man who vanished before he even knew he had a daughter. "No," she whispered under her breath. "It can't be him." Her gloved hand almost touched the frame when a voice startled her. "Something wrong, Miss Carter?" She spun around to find Mrs. Montgomery watching her from the doorway, her arms folded. Elena's lips parted, but no sound came out. She wanted to ask 100 questions. Why is his portrait here? Who is he to you? But her voice failed her. Mrs. Montgomery walked closer, her expression unreadable. "That portrait seems to draw everyone's attention," she said quietly. "My son, Richard Montgomery. He passed away 3 years ago." Elena's knees nearly buckled. "Son?" She glanced back at the portrait, her mind spinning. Ethan had told her his last name was Blake. But now, was it a lie? "I see," she managed to say, forcing a polite smile. "He looks very familiar." Mrs. Montgomery studied her face for a long, unsettling moment. "Do you know him?" Elena swallowed hard. "No, ma'am. I thought I did." Mrs. Montgomery's eyes lingered on her as if she could see straight through the lie. Then she simply said, "Clean the frame carefully. It's one of the last things I have of him." When she left, Elena stood frozen in front of the painting. Her pulse thundered in her ears. If Richard Montgomery was Ethan Blake, then everything she'd believed for the past 6 years, the abandonment, the silence, the heartbreak, had been built on a terrible misunderstanding. And worst of all, her little girl, Lily, had grown up without knowing that her father might have been alive until 3 years ago. Elena wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, "What did you hide from me, Ethan?" Behind her, the faint sound of footsteps echoed down the marble hall, slow and deliberate. Someone had been watching her the entire time. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, that portrait haunted her. The resemblance was undeniable. The sharp jawline, the piercing blue eyes, the faint half-smile that used to melt her heart. If Mrs. Montgomery was telling the truth and her son Richard was dead, then Ethan Blake, the man Elena had loved, had lived a secret double life. At dawn, she rose quietly, tiptoeing down the grand staircase. The house was silent, except for the ticking of a clock in the hallway. She found herself drawn once more to the portrait room. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting golden light across the man's painted face. It made him look alive, almost real, like he might step out of the frame at any moment. "Who were you, Ethan?" she whispered. Her fingers brushed the bottom of the frame, and for the first time she noticed something strange. A small metal plate with an inscription. Richard Ethan Montgomery, 1988-2022. Elena's breath caught. Ethan, his middle name. Her knees went weak. She sank onto the nearby sofa, shaking. He hadn't lied about everything, just his name. Why? Before she could think further, the sound of heels clicking against marble made her look up. Mrs. Montgomery stood in the doorway, her expression colder than yesterday. "Miss Carter," she said calmly, "I didn't realize you began work this early." "I couldn't sleep, ma'am. I wanted to start cleaning." Mrs. Montgomery's gaze shifted to the portrait. "My son had that same restless energy," she said softly. "He used to walk these halls at dawn thinking too much." Elena forced a smile. "He must have been a good man." For a brief second, pain flickered in the older woman's eyes. He was. But he made mistakes. Costly ones. Elena's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, "What mistakes?" But she stayed silent. Mrs. Montgomery turned away. "The staff breakfast is at 7. Be sure to join them. And Miss Carter?" She paused at the door. Curiosity can be a dangerous thing in this house. The warning chilled her to the bone. Later that morning, Elena found herself in the staff dining area. The other maids chatted quietly, stealing glances at her. The new girl. A kind-looking cook, Mrs. Hudson, smiled warmly and poured her tea. "You're brave, dear," the cook said in a hushed tone. "Not many last long here." Elena frowned. "Why not?" "Because this house is full of ghosts," Mrs. Hudson said, "and I don't mean the dead ones." Before Elena could ask, the cook leaned closer. "Mrs. Montgomery keeps too many secrets, about her son especially. Some say he didn't really die." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The cook hesitated. There was no funeral, no body, just a sudden announcement that he'd passed abroad. But every few months she gets a letter, sealed, no return address, and locks herself in her study for hours. A chill ran through Elena. "Letters?" Mrs. Hudson nodded. "I've seen them. Her hands shake when she opens them." Elena couldn't eat another bite. The idea that Ethan, or Richard, or whoever he was, might still be alive, made her dizzy. That afternoon, as she cleaned the study, she saw something that made her blood freeze. Inside a half-open drawer of the massive oak desk was a photograph, a candid picture of Ethan holding a newborn baby. Her baby. Tears filled her eyes as she pulled the photo closer. It was unmistakably Lily, wrapped in the same pink blanket Elena had used when she was born. The picture must have been taken secretly years ago. Suddenly, a voice behind her said, "That drawer is off limits." Elena jumped, spinning around to find Mr. Graves, the butler, standing there like a statue. I'm sorry," she stammered. "It was open. I didn't mean—" He stepped closer, his voice low. "Miss Carter, whatever brought you here, you'd better finish your work quietly and leave it at that. The lady of the house does not tolerate curiosity." Her hands trembled. "Did you know him? Richard Montgomery?" The butler's jaw tightened. "Everyone in this house knew him." But not everyone survived him. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Elena shaken. That night, Elena sat on her bed, clutching the photograph. Tears streamed down her cheeks as memories flooded back. The day Ethan disappeared, the unanswered calls, the nights she cried herself to sleep. He hadn't left her because he didn't care. He'd left because he couldn't come back. But why? Determined to find the truth, she made up her mind. Tomorrow, she would search deeper, through the mansion's forbidden rooms, through the lies and whispers that haunted the Montgomery name. And maybe, just maybe, she would finally discover why her daughter A.S.'s father was hidden behind a portrait in this cursed house. As thunder rolled outside, Elena whispered into the darkness, "Ethan, if you're still out there, I'll find you." And somewhere deep in the mansion, behind the walls, a faint click echoed like the sound of a door unlocking. The storm returned that night, howling through the estate's corridors as lightning flashed across the sky. The Montgomery mansion seemed alive, creaking, whispering, watching. Elena lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the photograph of Ethan and baby Lily clutched to her chest. She couldn't shake the image of Mrs. Montgomery's calm but guarded face, or the butler's warning. There was only one way to find the truth. When the clock struck midnight, Elena slipped out of bed. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, took a small flashlight from her cleaning cart, and crept down the silent hallway. Her heart pounded as she entered the portrait gallery. Moonlight poured through the tall windows, bathing the room in silver. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow her as she approached the center, the portrait of Ethan, or Richard. Up close, the frame looked thicker than usual, ornate gold, carved with strange patterns. She traced one finger along the edge and felt a faint vibration beneath the wood. It wasn't just a painting. Her hand brushed the wall beside it, smooth marble on one side, but behind the frame there was a hollow sound. Her breath caught. There's something behind it. Elena steadied herself and pulled slightly on the frame. It didn't budge. She tried pushing from the bottom. Nothing. Desperate, she remembered the tiny crest carved at the corner, the Montgomery family emblem. She pressed it, and a quiet click echoed through the hall. The painting slowly swung open like a door. Behind it lay a narrow, hidden passage. Her pulse quickened. The air inside was cold and smelled faintly of dust and metal. She lifted her flashlight and stepped inside. The stone walls were lined with shelves, filled with files, letters, and photographs. On one shelf, she found a box labeled Aremma, Private Correspondence. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were dozens of letters, all addressed to Mrs. Evelyn Montgomery. The first few lines made her heart stop. "Mother, I can't keep living under the Montgomery name. They'll find out everything if I stay. I've taken a new identity, Ethan Blake. Don't look for me. It's safer this way." Tears blurred Elena's vision. Ethan hadn't lied to hurt her. He'd changed his name to escape something. She flipped through more letters. Each told fragments of a story. Financial crimes within the family business, threats from powerful investors, betrayals, cover-ups. Ethan had run away to protect someone, maybe her. But the last letter was different. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. "They've found me. If anything happens, tell her the truth. Tell her about our daughter." Her breath caught in her throat. He knew about Lily. A floorboard creaked behind her. Elena froze, turning off her flashlight. Her heart thundered. Someone else was in the passage. "Miss Carter," a low voice murmured, "you shouldn't be here." It was Mr. Graves, the butler. But his tone wasn't angry. It was almost afraid. She took a step back. "You knew, didn't you? About Ethan? About his daughter?" His expression flickered with conflict. "I knew more than I should have," he said quietly. "But there are things even Mrs. Montgomery doesn't know. Things best left buried." Elena held up one of the letters. "He didn't die, did he?" The butler's jaw clenched. "That depends on what you mean by die," she frowned. "What are you talking about?" He sighed deeply, glancing toward the dark hallway. "There's a reason this room was sealed. The young master uncovered something about his father's business, evidence that could destroy the family's fortune. When he refused to stay quiet, he disappeared. Officially, they declared him dead, but..." He hesitated. "I helped him escape." Elena's eyes widened. "You helped him?" Mr. Graves nodded. "He left under the name Ethan Blake. He told me he loved someone, a woman from the city, and that she was expecting a child. He wanted to come back for you, but he never could." Her throat tightened. "So he is alive?" The butler's face darkened. "I don't know. The last message I received from him was 3 years ago, the same day Mrs. Montgomery received that final letter." Lightning flashed, illuminating the hidden room. For an instant, Elena thought she saw movement, a shadow at the far end of the passage. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Graves turned sharply. "We're not alone here! Come!" He grabbed her arm, pulling her out of the hidden corridor. The portrait swung shut behind them just as heavy footsteps echoed in the hall outside. They ducked behind a pillar as the door creaked open. Mrs. Montgomery entered the gallery holding a candle. Her face was pale, her eyes glistening. "I warned you, Miss Carter," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the portrait. "Some truths destroy more than they heal." Elena stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "You lied to me. He was my daughter's father, wasn't he?" The older woman's lips trembled. "I tried to protect you both," she whispered, "but I couldn't protect him." Tears welled in her eyes as she touched the edge of the portrait. "Richard isn't dead, Elena. He's hidden. Somewhere even I can't find." Elena's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Montgomery turned toward her slowly. "If you truly love him, then you must be ready for what comes next." Thunder shook the windows, and somewhere deep within the mansion a faint chime rang, like a signal. The butler's face went pale. "He's back." Elena's heart stopped. "Ethan?" Mrs. Montgomery's voice quivered as she whispered, "Yes, my son has come home." The storm had grown wild outside, lightning splitting the sky open as thunder roared through the Montgomery estate. The lights flickered, and the grand hall was swallowed in shadows. Elena stood frozen between Mrs. Montgomery and Mr. Graves, her mind spinning. "He's back." The words echoed in her head like a dream or a nightmare. What do you mean he's back?" she whispered. "He's alive?" Mrs. Montgomery's face was pale, trembling between fear and relief. "I don't know how, but he sent word. Tonight. The bell you just heard. It's the signal he told me to wait for if he ever returned." Before Elena could respond, a loud bang echoed from the main doors of the mansion. Mr. Graves rushed forward, his voice low. "Stay here." But Elena couldn't. Every instinct in her screamed that she needed to see him, to finally end the years of grief, the questions, the lies. She followed quietly as the butler opened the massive oak doors. Rain poured in through the open entrance. A man stood there, drenched, wearing a black coat and hat pulled low. For a moment, all she could see was his silhouette, tall, broad-shouldered, familiar. When he lifted his head, her heart stopped. "Ethan," she breathed. He looked exactly the same, older, wearier, but the same soft blue eyes that had haunted her for years. "Elena," he said, his voice raw, trembling, "I knew you'd find me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You're alive." Before she could move, Mrs. Montgomery appeared behind her, clutching her chest. "Richard," she whispered. "My son." Ethan's expression softened. "Mother." He stepped inside, dripping water on the marble floor, his gaze shifting between them. I never wanted to disappear, but if I hadn't, none of you would be safe. Elena took a shaky step forward. Safe from what? He hesitated. His eyes darkened. My father's business wasn't what it seemed. He was laundering money through charities, threatening people, powerful people. When I tried to expose it, they came after me. Mr. Graves helped me fake my death. Elena's breath trembled. You could have told me, Ethan. You let me think you abandoned us. He moved closer, his voice breaking. I couldn't, Elena. They were watching you. If they knew you were connected to me, you and Lily would have been targets. At the mention of her daughter's name, Mrs. Montgomery gasped softly. Lily? Elena nodded slowly, tears spilling down her face. Your granddaughter. The older woman covered her mouth, trembling as if the air had been knocked out of her. Ethan's voice softened. I watched from afar, Elena. I saw you at the park once, with her. I wanted to come to you so badly, but it wasn't safe. I thought one day, when it was over, but it never ended, Elena whispered bitterly. He shook his head. Not until now. Another thunderclap rattled the mansion. Mr. Graves suddenly stepped forward, tense. We're not alone. Everyone turned. From the hallway beyond the gallery, shadows moved. Two men in dark coats stepped into view, their expressions cold. Ethan's jaw tightened. They found me! Mrs. Montgomery cried out, No! Before panic could rise, Ethan grabbed Elena's hand. There's a passage through the cellar. It leads outside to the woods. Go, take my mother. Elena shook her head fiercely. I'm not leaving you again. Please, he said, his voice breaking. You already lost me once. I won't let that happen to you again. Gunshots shattered the silence. One of the men fired toward them, the bullet grazing a marble pillar. Ethan pushed Elena and Mrs. Montgomery toward the back corridor as Mr. Graves blocked the way, shouting, Go! I'll hold them off! They ran through the twisting hallways, the storm screaming outside. Elena's lungs burned, her heart aching. She didn't know if they'd escape, or if this mansion would become their tomb. At last, they reached the cellar. Ethan pulled open the heavy door and guided them down the narrow steps. There's a tunnel through here, he said. It leads to the old chapel near the forest. But as they descended, a sudden gunshot echoed again. Ethan gasped, stumbling. His hand pressed to his side. Ethan, Elena cried, catching him before he fell. Blood seeped through his fingers. He winced, forcing a weak smile. Guess, I'm not as lucky the second time. Tears streamed down her face. No, don't say that. Mrs. Montgomery knelt beside them, shaking. We can still save you. But Ethan just shook his head. Take care of her, both of you. Tell Lily. I love her. Elena clutched his hand, sobbing. You'll tell her yourself, do you hear me? You're not dying on me again. He reached up, his trembling fingers brushing her cheek. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. His hand went limp. Elena's scream echoed through the dark cellar, lost in the roar of thunder above. Hours later, the police arrived, summoned by Mrs. Montgomery. The men who had chased Ethan were gone, their tracks lost in the storm. Ethan's body was taken away quietly, but in his hand, Elena found a folded note, a letter she'd never received. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't make it back. But please know, every heartbeat I had after leaving you was spent wishing I could hold you both again. Tell Lily her father was never far away. I was always watching the stars for her. Weeks passed. The mansion grew quiet again, its secrets laid bare. Mrs. Montgomery left everything, the estate, the wealth, the portrait, to Elena and Lily. But Elena couldn't bring herself to stay there. One evening, she and Lily visited Ethan's grave beneath the old oak tree behind the chapel. Lily, holding her mother's hand, placed a single daisy on the stone. Mama, she whispered, will Daddy see this from heaven? Elena smiled through her tears. He already does, sweetheart. He's right there watching. As the wind rustled the leaves, the faint sound of a bell echoed from the mansion, a soft chime just once, as though Ethan's spirit was saying goodbye. Elena looked toward the house, whispering, "You found your way home." And for the first time in years, peace settled over her heart.